Hello, good evening and welcome to NRAS Live. I'm Clare Jacklin. I'm Chief Exec of the National Rheumatoid Arthritis Society. You're very welcome and thank you for joining us. If you have any queries throughout if you can put a comment in, we'll be able to try and get to as many of those as possible. Tonight's topic is the importance of exercise, and exercise to me can be a bit of a dirty word. It makes me go a bit, ooh, lycra, but it isn't all lycra, and you're going to hear a lot from our wonderful panel this evening. So I'm joined by Gregory from Salford Royal Hospital. Good evening, Will. I'm joined by Jess, Ayesha, Ailsa and Katy, who all have experience of living with rheumatoid arthritis themselves or helping those who are living with rheumatoid arthritis to exercise and to keep fit. So you're all incredibly welcome. Thank you for giving up your evening this evening to join us. So before we start, as I said, if you've got any queries, you can pop it into, if you're watching on Facebook, you can make some comments there. If you're watching on LinkedIn, you can also make some comments, and on YouTube. And so with no further ado, we'll introduce all my guests in a few moments, but Will has a short presentation to kick starters off, and that might prompt some questions. We're going to focus on exercise this evening. So if you do have questions about medications or COVID or vaccines, perhaps you could hold them off for another time, or if you do post them, we will try and answer them in a separate way, or signpost you where you might find those answers. So we're going to go off camera now, and Will, I'm going to hand over to you to share your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Claire, and good evening, everyone. Or if you're watching this back, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you're choosing to access this. I'm delighted to have had an invite to come back and speak to you all again. I've got just a few slides to introduce our topic this session. They're just gone missing for a moment, so I'll just see if they turn up. There they are now. So I'll just share my screen, and I'm just going to talk through why we think exercise is so important for people living with rheumatoid arthritis. And Claire challenged me to come up with a slightly edgy title. So the title is Exercise is Medicine, which is a term you've hopefully heard before, but the angle we're going to look at is how keeping yourself active can help keep your inflammatory arthritis inactive. So exercise really is a good medicine for rheumatoid arthritis, and possibly as good as any of those tablets or injections you might be using. So we're going to give us a scientific angle first, and this was a special supplement in the Rheumatology Advances in Practice journal that came out earlier this year. So this gets posted out to most all rheumatology healthcare professionals in the UK, and it's got quite a good global audience as well. So this will be your rheumatologist, hopefully, has read this, as well as the rest of your team looking after you. And the supplement looked at why physical activity was so important. And the title of the editorial from Dr. Lindsay Byrne said, "Is it time to push the pace of change with regards to this?" So she mentioned firstly that being physically active does improve health outcomes in people with rheumatoid arthritis, but also, even though it's recommended, it's often an overlooked therapy for people living with rheumatoid arthritis. So what does it go on to say in the article? So these are the bits of the pie that we're going to put together with regards to your exercise habits. Firstly, somebody living with rheumatoid arthritis, just like anybody else in the UK as an adult, should aim to hit this 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity or equivalent per week. So that's quite a big commitment. It chunks down as maybe 20-25 minutes a day, perhaps, if you're trying to divide it in that manner. You should probably have an individualized progressive program of moderate to high intensity aerobic training, so fitness work, as well as resistance training. And it does say for all muscle groups, so that will keep you busy, but that hopefully will fit within that short period of exercise per day you might dedicate to this. Next piece of the pie. So you should be doing strength training at least twice a week. And that's the same for anyone living with rheumatoid arthritis or not. There should be some thinking about balance as well, and it can be combined as a multi-component balance and strength training program to enhance your function, to doing the things that are important to you. Those with pain or dysfunction at the wrists or hands are recommended to complete a tailored strengthening and stretching exercise program for the wrist and hands. So that's something that's called the SARAH program, SARAH, which is strengthening and stretching in rheumatoid arthritis hands, which you may be able to find, or there are resources on the NRAS website for that, of course. And finally, and possibly the most important chunk of the pie, is your exercise habits should account for your current rheumatoid arthritis activity level, your disease activity, and your symptoms. So whilst lots of these statements are the same for anyone in the country, we do need to make sure that we're accounting your exercise for how your arthritis is behaving at that time. So why does it help? And we're going to go over to the Molecular Basis of Disease journal, which is not something I subscribe to or read to regularly, but this is a Brazilian group that wrote a nice summary of that. There is a wide array of molecular pathways that have been investigated during the past decade to understand the mechanisms by which the practice of physical exercise or physical activity improves our ability to fight inflammation and to help us with our general kind of vitality. If we go down to the more specifics in rheumatoid arthritis, we're going to bring in Professor Metzios. You'll have met George, hopefully, on an NRAS webinar previously. It's definitely worth hearing him speak. And I'm just going to highlight a few of his papers. The first is that aerobic and resistance training in rheumatoid arthritis improves functional outcomes, potentially via blunting the inflammatory response. So the idea is the exercise not only makes you feel better and keep more active, it can actually dampen down the inflammation. What's been found is that physical activity can change your TNF and interleukin levels. So if you're on an injectable drug for your arthritis, it could be it's an anti-TNF, it could be it's an IL-17. Both of those injections' main ingredient is aimed at controlling these cytokines, which we know physical activity can also help to control. I'm not by any means saying throw away your injections and tablets and just treat exercise. I'm just saying we need to use both of those to get best outcomes for people living with arthritis. What's more, this is a slightly older study, but it did show 6 months of exercise led to a reduction in CRP, so one of those inflammatory blood tests that you might be having regularly, and you might look at the levels where we know that exercise can knock it down a level or two. So we're doing exercise for all manner of reasons, but one of them, it does help to control the disease. So what do you do? What are your physical activity levels? And this is a slide I shared at the NRAS Open Day or Patients Day in 2013, 10 years ago, and it's still relevant today. So when you're exercising, what are you doing? Is it measurable? Can you tell how much you've done? Can you tell how much you need to do? Do you have a kind of target of where you're aiming? Is it sustainable? Is it something that you'll do for 3 weeks and then give up on and never do again? Or is it something that you think, actually, I could see myself doing this daily for life because I kind of enjoy it one way or another? And partly, is it fun? I hope what you choose as your regular activity is fun. And we've got some interesting angles from the rest of our panel on this session about how you can keep some variety in your exercise habits and make it fun with that. Do you exercise alone? Do you exercise with other people? When you're not feeling up to it, does somebody knock on your door and say, come on, let's just go and do it? As long as you're not on a disease flare at that time, I guess. Do you have an accountability? So is there anybody who says, well done, you achieved it today, that's great, or you're bang on this week, you're really doing everything we want you to do? Or somebody to say, perhaps you've had a slightly rough week and we'll get back on it next week. So is there somebody who cares about your physical activity levels and cares about how you're maintaining your maximum capabilities? Is your fitness improving? Or perhaps the more realistic goal is, can we maintain your fitness and keep you as fit and active as you always have been? What happens during a flare-up or on a bad day? So the nature of living with rheumatoid arthritis is you will probably still have flare-ups. They might last for a few days, they might last for a few weeks. Does that mean you completely stop exercising? Does it mean you move to a more gentle form of exercise? Do you move to a form of exercise that avoids the joint that's in flare-up, perhaps? And what do you do on a bad day? And maybe it's not the flare-up, it's just that, like everyone else in the world, you get up thinking, oh, I'm not sure I can be bothered. And everyone's allowed to have a day off. It's just making sure that the next day you go, oh yeah, well, let's get back on it. And you don't beat yourself up for having missed a day there. Within your exercise habits, are you meeting those general guidelines I just put up on that pie chart earlier? And are you meeting any rheumatoid arthritis specific guidelines? Now, there aren't many of those, but they do relate to that twice a week strengthening and the idea of balance exercises, as well as cardiovascular fitness and stretching as a part of your routine. I said I'd be 10 minutes. I've been slightly less. So that gives us more time to enjoy each other's company. And at this point, I'm hoping other people will appear. Yes, thanks, Claire. I'm not on my own. And
You're not alone. You're not alone, indeed. Thank you very much. And that is, just a snapshot of why it is so important to exercise. Not so much exercise, but keep moving. I think it's just that you get that what makes it right for you as well as individuals, because there's all sorts. What suits one person doesn't always suit somebody else. Mm-hmm. So let me introduce the rest of our lovely panel here this evening. I'll come to Ayesha first. Ayesha, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So my name's Ayesha. I've had rheumatoid arthritis for about 13 years now. So I was diagnosed back in 2010. It was about a year of having symptoms before I was diagnosed. For me, I turned to exercise quite early on. I felt like it would help me. I've qualified as a personal trainer and I teach resistance training. So that is my niche, that's my speciality. And I can say firsthand, I also from aerobic exercise, I do both. But I can say firsthand, doing the resistance training for me personally has massively helped my rheumatoid arthritis, controlling the symptoms, and so on. So yeah, that's me. Brief introduction.
Thank you, Ayesha. And I can see we have had a query about resistance training, so I'm going to come back to you shortly. Okay. And Katy.
Hi, I'm Katy. I am a regular volunteer for NRAS. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis just over 12 years ago, and similar to Ayesha, I'd had symptoms for about a year. I've always been a really sort of active person, so I danced as a child. I played a lot of tennis. So tennis was actually one of the activities that made me realise that my rheumatoid arthritis symptoms had got quite bad whilst I was trying to get diagnosed. So sort of once I was diagnosed, I got back into sort of running and physical activity relatively quickly once the sort of medications had sort of taken a bit of control. So I regularly sort of run now. I play netball and just generally try to kind of move on a regular basis. And for me, that's definitely both helped my sort of RA symptoms, but also I think it's a great thing for your mental health.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And Jess.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jess, and my mum and my nan and my mother-in-law all have RA. And I've been practicing yoga for a long time and qualified as a yoga instructor several years ago now. And just because of my experience with my family with having RA, I'm really passionate about sharing the benefits with people that maybe are apprehensive about doing yoga. So I hold chair yoga sessions, and these are exclusively for people that have RA. And yeah, they're amazing in terms of bringing people together. I'm sure I'll go into it a little bit more as we get into the conversation, but that's me.
That's great. And last but no means least, our founder of NRAS, Ailsa.
Hi, everyone. So I've had RA for 43 odd years now. And of course, being diagnosed all that time ago, when we didn't have the drugs that we have today, and the disease was treated very differently back then, I sustained quite a lot of damage very early on. And it was at least 3 years into aggressive disease and having surgery before I even had my first DMARD. And as a consequence, I've got lots of replaced joints and so on. And I was very active before diagnosis, and I do play a lot of tennis. I rode, I did, I loved water skiing, went on holiday, and all of those sorts of things. But gradually over the years, because of all the surgery I've had to I've not been able to do as much physically. And I certainly have found, and I don't know whether anybody watching tonight will have experienced the same thing, but I found that because of COVID and being very sedentary, more sedentary than normal, not going out to the office every day, sitting on my backside in front of my computer all day, and then in the evening, you have a meal, you sit down, you read a book, you sit down, you watch TV, you sit down. So I've lost, I think, a lot of strength. Not that I had a massive amount before, but I really struggle to exercise. But I've maybe we'll come back to this, but I've had Ayesha come and help me to get going again in terms of strengthening and resistance training, and she's going to come back and help me again because I've kind of got out of the habit because of a flare that I had, and then just didn't get back into it. So I need Ayesha to come and sort me out again.
Well, actually, that leads on really nicely to, not everybody watching might know what resistance training is. What, it sounds a bit vigorous to my mind. But Ayesha, could you explain a little bit about what is resistance training, and how somebody with perhaps historical joint damage like Ailsa, and Willie has also asked this question in the chat. So explain a little bit more about resistance training.
Of course, yes. So it's anything that increases muscle strength over time. You can use weight or force. So when we think of resistance training, you may think of, so I quickly went back to the comments, someone mentioned going to the gym. So yeah, resistance training, if you go to a commercial gym, you're thinking of dumbbells or kettlebells or possibly a barbell. If your rheumatoid arthritis is really well controlled, then you can definitely perform safe lifting. I have clients who have rheumatoid arthritis who use dumbbells and a kettlebell with me. If you're someone where you've had joint damage or your arthritis isn't overly well controlled, we can still do other types of resistance training. So we can consider using bands. So with Ailsa, I'll use like a small looped resistance band. And we're just thinking of the muscles that we're trying to work and what we're trying to target. So if someone has, let's say, joint damage to the wrists, we can use a band and then here over the forearm, we work, and then we can work different muscle groups. Apart from bands, you can use a long band as well. Also, you can also do resistance training with body weight only. So even if you think of a body weight squat, you're using some force, you're using some resistance there. Walking uphill could be considered a resistance type workout. But then I did quickly look at the comment from, I think it was Will. I'm trying to find it now. I think there was a comment about, I'm just going back to it. I shy away from the gym. Which form of resistance training would be best to strengthen my upper body? So you could strengthen upper body at home. So for example, if I want to do some upper body exercises, I don't have weights, even things like a plank, where you're holding your weight on your forearm, that's working the upper portion of the body. Or if you want to at home, you can do a variation of like a bench press. So you could do a chest press at home. And then the way you place your shoulders, so rather than 90 degrees, bringing them to 45 degrees is easier on the shoulder joint. You can work through the chest. So there's always something you can do. We do keep, with my clients, I think of safe lifting. I keep that in mind. And then depending on where the joint damage is and how much they can do, then we adapt that way. Does that answer your question?
It does indeed. Thank you very much. And so, Ailsa, you've done some of this. What was it like when you first started doing some of this resistance training? When, as you said, you've got quite a lot of, joint replacements and historical damage.
Yeah, it was. Initially, we just did the exercises without any weights or anything. but we moved gradually onto using cans of baked beans or whatever. So, you know, exercising using, you know, cans in your hands and that sort of thing to work different muscle groups, and then leg exercises and so on, both sitting and standing. And there's no doubt after 6 weeks of doing this, I definitely felt a difference, and I felt my balance had improved and my strength had improved. But I then went into a massive flare for a period of time, and it was winter and so on. So I kind of got out of the habit of doing this, because I was doing this at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week for about 20 minutes. And then, of course, you know, with another lockdown and all the rest of it, I just got out of the habit. So I find it incredibly difficult because of all the damage I've got, and because my feet and ankles are pretty painful, you know, on an almost daily basis. So walking is difficult. I think there are lots of people, you know, who've, like me, who've had the disease for a very long time, and for whom I think exercise is a real challenge. Trying to motivate yourself when you've worked all day to then do 20 minutes of exercise is incredibly hard. But, you know, hopefully people like me are, you know, going to become less and less, because, you know, if you're like Katy and you were diagnosed within the period of time since the advent of the biologics, you will be diagnosed, if you don't do well on standard DMARDs, you'll move quickly onto a biologic. So you won't have the kind of joint destruction that I've experienced.
Yeah. And I think you've just mentioned something there. You've mentioned the word a few times, habit, making something a habit. Will, as a physiotherapist, you know, my son is a sports therapist, and so he sees people that come in, and you see them, you give them a group of exercises, and they go away, and then they come back, and they haven't made it happen. What sort of tips or techniques can you give people to try and make it a habit, so it's not something that just happens in the gym or just happens when you go to see your physio?
Thanks, Claire. And I think it's really kind of you to share your story, Ailsa, in that if you can drop out of good habits, then any of us can, really. And I think that is human nature, that we need that bit of a nudge. And I'm sure we'd all love to have Ayesha popping in regularly, but if we don't have that as an option, I suppose it's having somebody that is aware of why you've been given those exercises by the physiotherapist, by the personal trainer, by whoever it may be, and that they can encourage you to do that. And if it's not a person, you can use your phone to do this. So, you know, if we all have smartphones in our pockets, then if you set an alarm that reminds you at 2 o'clock every day, or some more exciting apps that cheer at you when you've done it, and you get a little sticker or something, you know, I think having stickers and rewards charts sounds like something you do with children, but actually with adults, I think we mostly all respond to that, having that kind of positive reinforcement as to, well done, you've done what you were meant to do. The other angle is, the more you understand why you're doing it and how it will benefit you, the more likely you are to persevere. So even though, you know, as Ailsa said, her feet and ankles are very uncomfortable when she's doing it, I hope she's got the greater picture of, okay, it's uncomfortable now, but by doing this in the longer run, this will sustain my strength and ability and my balance. But it is hard, and actually it can be that other person who helps you exercise, but also if you can meet other people living with rheumatoid arthritis and share your challenges, that in itself can be useful to kind of discuss with other people what stops them or what keeps them going.
And exactly, you mentioned, you know, anybody with a smartphone or a tablet can join in and things. And Jess, you do chair-based yoga for people with rheumatoid arthritis. Tell us a little bit about the groups that you run online, and how people can get involved in those.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, so I started doing a 5-week course with the chair yoga, and that was in lockdown. And at the end of the 5 weeks, people said, oh, I don't want to stop this. It's really made a difference. So I kept it going. And now I have 2 cohorts on a Tuesday morning and on a Thursday morning, both at 8:30, so that people can join after they've woken up, had a bit of breakfast or a cup of tea. Often people say that in the morning it's harder to get going, so that's why they're at that time. And what's really lovely is that it started off as purely being about the exercise, and now it's a really great community, which also makes such a difference. And we move together, we laugh together, and the exercises can be dialed up or down depending on what's going on in your body that week. And yeah, I think it's just such a great opportunity for people to come. And even if you've never practiced yoga before, or you're perhaps feeling a little nervous about doing it in a live in-person setting, you can turn your camera off, you can have it on, so hopefully people feel really comfortable. Is that clear?
Sorry, go ahead.
If you are interested in joining, then we can provide a link to more information.
Excellent. Yes. So, and there's lots of these sorts of things going on online now. And as you said, it's less intimidating to be sitting in your own sitting room doing this. So I know a lot of people on the chat have been talking about going to the gym, and maybe some of the gym equipment isn't really set up for people whose joints don't quite bend in the normal way. So there is so much, and we have got a section on our website, and hopefully my colleague will put some the link up on exercise videos that you can actually just do while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, or when you're watching Coronation Street, sitting in your chair, or you can challenge yourself to walk up the stairs, maybe 5 times more than you would normally. And there's simple things you can do around the house just to get moving, or walking around the garden, or doing things. So it's not all about going to the gym. And a lot of people have been talking about walking, and walking is also, building up your walking gradually, and maybe walking with a friend. When you're chatting, you might not notice how far you're walking as well. So like Jess, Ayesha, you also do some online exercises with people with the resistance training. And how's that going, and how are people finding that?
It's gone really well. So I ran a course for NRAS, and then I had some people join on. My group, I know Jess is saying hers is chair-based. My group is a little more intensive. The people on that group are training 3 times a week. But I have RA, so we've got half of my group is autoimmune or has RA or fibro or MS. So I will always give swap outs to people so they know they can go at the intensity they want to. For us, it's really important. And I remember Ailsa mentioned this to me, cachecha, so losing muscle mass. For people with RA, that happens to us, where we're losing muscle mass. We might be the same weight, but we've increased our body fat and reduced muscle mass. And we know muscle is one of your keys to really healthy aging. I can't overstress the importance of having a good amount of muscle mass. So you do need to be doing some form of resistance training. For me and group, so the feedback I've gotten is that my RA is improved. I feel stronger. And also remember, a good amount of muscle mass is going to give you balance, mobility. It's your amino acid reservoir. So I'm really passionate about making sure that you are working towards building that muscle mass. And yeah, we do. I have enough variations of swap out. So people who maybe, if you can't hold a weight, you will have a regression. If you want to go a little bit harder, you will have a progression. But yeah, my group is early, so it's 6:45. It's an early morning group, but it's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Wow. Some very early morning risers, but maybe when you exercise more, you have more energy and you can get up early. So
it's a good start to the day.
And that's how we should all start the day, definitely. So we've had some other questions come in. We had one that was preset earlier, was there was a lady who's waiting for knee replacement and is a bit worried about, you know, what they can do while they're waiting for a knee replacement. Or there's another question in there about both knees have been drained and injected next week. I've started swimming. So it's like, when you are going through that, Will, what is probably the safest thing they can do that might not cause any further damage?
I mean, I think if we go for the waiting for a knee replacement query first, this is something that lots of people are doing in this country at the moment, sadly, due to the long wait list for these kind of procedures. So there is the NHS Waiting Well programme, which is an online exercise resource for those people who are on wait lists for a joint replacement. So it's worth linking into that. We do know the stronger you are, the fitter you are before you have a joint replacement, the better outcome you have after you've had it replaced, if you see what I mean. So there's quite a lot of prehab where we're trying to get you as fit and strong as possible, despite that problematic knee joint, for instance, so that we get a better outcome afterwards. So please don't sit on your sofa doing nothing, waiting for your hip or knee replacement or joint replacement. Please do find something you can do that will keep that joint active and as strong as possible within the confines of the pain you're no
because I
doubt
suppose it's all about
with.
building that muscle, you know, so that when you do get that new knee or that new hip, that your muscles around are ready for it as well, and you can get back to fitness as quickly as possible. Then that's really great. And Katy, now
Absolutely.
You're quite amazing, because you're training at the moment for a marathon, and you play netball. And how do you build that in around a busy working life, a mum of a lovely little young chap who came for a little visit earlier, and but you know, and dealing with your rheumatoid arthritis? What sort of you're quite an inspiration, but how do you actually put that into action on a day-to-day basis?
That's quite tough to answer, actually. So it's just sort of, I think it's a kind of habit that has been inbuilt in me since I was a child. My dad and my brother are cyclists. My sister did a lot of dancing. So when I was a child, sort of pretty much every night, I'd either be at dancing, tennis, or something like that. So it's kind of been in me from sort of childhood. So that habit to sort of move and include it as part of my kind of social life. So I think that's one of the things why I started playing netball. I didn't actually enjoy netball when I was at school, but when I moved to a new area, I wanted to meet new people, kind of make new acquaintances. So I joined a sort of local netball team, and I was really pleased that I'd done that, because when I got diagnosed with RA, unfortunately, my wrist joints did, I think, get a little bit of damage, and I've never really built that strength back up in my wrists. So I unfortunately had to stop playing tennis because the pain was just too bad. But then netball kind of took that place, essentially. And then actually, RA made me enter my first marathon. I'd always sort of had the desire to run a marathon, but I just didn't have that sort of, I don't know, that kind of rocket to kind of force me to do it. And when I was diagnosed, I really lost a lot of strength, a lot of fitness. I did put on quite a bit of weight. So once the medications had started to work for me, and I felt in myself that I just got a place in the London Marathon and did that in 2012. And then I'm now doing Brighton Marathon on Sunday, and actually training's been a lot easier to fit in than it was sort of 10 years ago, because I do sort of work from home. It's also a great escape from the family. It's my kind of alone time. So kind of building that in So I'll sort of do the school drop off, go for a run, come home, and have my working day. So it's just trying to build in those habits essentially, and something that's actually really helped me. So I run the Join Together exercise and back to sport group alongside a gentleman called Ian, and it's been absolutely brilliant to sort of have the encouragement from other people with inflammatory arthritis, and we've set up a Strava group. So we kind of all sort of cheer each other on, whether people are going for walks, whether people are going for long bike rides, runs. I put all my netball matches on there, so people can laugh when we lose or cheer me on when we win. So it's really, I think, as sort of Jess and Ayesha have alluded to, it's sort of that building that community, and sort of, getting that encouragement and finding something that you enjoy. Not everybody likes running. I hate cycling and swimming. So it's just, finding your own niche.
And I just spotted a comment there about, how can I gradually start training to run and do more jumping? And certainly, Amelia, if you're still listening, you go to the next Joint Together online group, talk to others about how they've done it, because I think that peer support is really important. Yeah. One, to sort of address the anxieties that might be around trying something and how to build it up gradually.
And one thing I really struggled sort of in gym classes when I was first diagnosed, because I felt a little bit embarrassed about saying I couldn't do things. So I think that's one of the barriers as well to other people. So I think it's sort of finding some things that you can do to sort of build up.
That's great. And you can see the link on the bottom there to our Joint Together groups. We have different topics of online community groups talking. So there is the one that Katie's involved in getting back to sports and exercise. So please go along. And they're all freely available. So please do so. The other thing I was just thinking about was, sorry, Ailsa, yes.
I was just going to say, I think Katie's raised a very important point. There is, I think, embarrassment is one of the main barriers about going to somewhere where you're with other people you don't know to do any kind of exercise. If you feel that it's quite difficult to overcome those sorts of things, which is why having these online things that you can do in the comfort of your own home, you don't have to go anywhere, and you can join a sort of online community. I think these can be really, really beneficial for people where for them that is one of the barriers to actually getting going with something.
And I can see lots of lovely comments going on in the chat at the moment. I've just seen the one from hi Jackie. I see you're watching. Nice to see a familiar name pop up. Sharing their experiences. And also I know that Soothwaite is on the line, one of our lovely volunteers from Oxford, and again talking about how she's found yoga particularly helpful as well. And I think it's just finding what works for you is the most important, what makes it fun. I think you said it in your slides earlier, Will, that to do something that is a bit of a drudge, you're going to convince yourself not to do it. Whereas it's something fun and you like doing it. I absolutely detest going to the gym. I can't imagine anything worse, but I love dancing. And I know that when we're putting together the Smile module, our next Smile module will be on exercise, and we'll have, Jess and Ayesha and Katy contributing, and Will. But we'll also have somebody talking about dancing. So it's finding what's right for you and what works. And, certainly that can be a great thing. But it is about being measurable as well. And going back to one of your slides, Will, where you said about, how can you measure whether it's doing any good and whether you're enjoying it? And what's your opinion? There's so many wearables out there at the moment to count your steps and all those sorts of things. So are they, any of you find those useful? Is it something you recommend in your clinic, Will?
I'll go first. Yes, I highly recommend them. I think they're really good to motivate you, but as long as you're not comparing yourself to some kind of ideal standard. And I have mixed feelings about the 10,000 steps a day message, because it's quite nice and most people know of that, like they know about eating fruit and veg 5 a day or whatever, but 10,000 steps isn't necessarily the target for everyone. And you might be in a situation where 500 steps a day is just right for you. But if it's 500 a day, maybe next week it'll be 600 a day, and the week after that will be 700. So having the ability to measure that is good, to make sure you're progressing, but also to make sure you're not overdoing it potentially if you're trying to gradually improve your fitness. People get injuries if they suddenly go from, I don't know, a 1 mile walk to running a 5K race, you know, without anything in between. So it can allow you to gradually take those steps in a more monitored, measured way. So I love monitoring of any kind, really.
Good, it's all measurable. How about you, Ayesha, Katy, Jess? You find that?
I used to have an Apple Watch, so it was great when I had it. I think sometimes you get into enough healthy habits that you don't necessarily need. So I haven't replaced my watch. I don't feel like I no longer necessarily need it, but I think they're great for measuring resting heart rate. Would be something I would look at when I had it. Steps would be something I'd look at. So I think you can and you can't. I think it's useful if you're building healthy habits.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Strava because it kind of measures, I mean, it's not completely accurate, but it measures how your fitness is progressing. So I kind of really enjoy that, and the sort of community that's within the app. And I've got a Garmin watch to sort of measure things. And I do find the sort of step count quite good, just for sort of a baseline of how active I've been. So generally on a Sunday, my step count is really low, and then it kind of really just varies. So I find it really useful.
That's fantastic. And we're getting some lovely comments. It's lovely to see. I can see a message there popped up from Kate Viner. Hi, Kate. Nice to see you on the chat. You know, aqua aerobics, swimming. We haven't had much talk about that. And I think there was an earlier question in about, yes, there you go. Is swimming, you know, the getting back into swimming. Sometimes some of the swimming pools are difficult if they've got ladders down into the pool instead of you know, shallower steps or a gradual thing. But any of you find swimming useful, or Will, again, is that something that you would recommend, aqua aerobics and swimming?
I quite like Lisa's comment that you don't have to speak to people, and that kind of shows us that we all exercise in different ways, don't we? And I think that's lovely. That's one of the benefits for Lisa, is that she can just get on, and she doesn't have to. What does she say? She doesn't have to feel abnormal, I suppose, if she's saying she feels normal in the pool. So that's great. It's a wonderful environment to exercise in the pool. I feel I should just go back to Lisa's question, when she can get back to swimming after that knee injection and drain. Normally 24, 48 hours after, but it might be up to 7 days. They advise you just to rest up. And I'm a big fan of hydrotherapy, so warm water exercise, which about 50% of NHS facilities do have access to. And if you're not a swimmer, you can stand in this lovely warm water and stretch off and strengthen and work on your balance in there. So yeah, if it works for you, it's a great option.
And there was a question earlier about, you know, what specific exercises would be good for rheumatoid arthritis when somebody also has osteoporosis. And of course, balance is really important with the higher risk of osteoporosis, because if you fall, you've got a higher risk of breaking a bone. So again,
a big priority to work on weight-bearing exercises, to getting as much of your weight through your long bones to increase that bone strengthening within there, which interestingly swimming and hydrotherapy will do nothing for. So although they might help with the pain of osteoporosis, they won't help with the bone strength. So it's other exercises that get that weight going through your long bones that can help.
So it's the strengthening exercises that Ayesha is talking about, and that resistance, would that be the right type of exercises?
Potentially that would be helpful. Walking's great as well, because you're getting your body weight through there. Yeah, but there's decent overlap between your osteoporosis regime and your rheumatoid arthritis regime, so don't feel like you're having to do twice as many exercises. There's quite a few that can cover both bases there.
And, you know, we're almost coming to the end, but we did have an earlier question about golf and somebody quite keen to get back to golf. I'll just read you the question. It was, how sensible would it be for a retired woman diagnosed with RA 2 years ago to take up golf as a hobby? Could golf cause further damage to the wrist joints? And I think it's the concern about the swing, I suppose, and the wrist.
So we know about
Actually,
90% of people living with arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, do end up with wrist and hand problems. So it is quite prevalent. You can get wider grips on your golf clubs, which makes it a bit easier to grip if you are having hand and wrist function problems. I think from this question that's come in, it sounds like this person might have some friends who they're going to golf with. So it ties back to our idea of, is it an exercise that becomes a nice habit for you? It is good because it keeps the whole body moving. It gets you walking, it gets you out and about, it forces you to go out when you might not choose to otherwise. So it may be you just need to think about your gloves and the grips on your clubs. But if it's something that you'd like to pursue, I don't think there's any reason somebody living with rheumatoid arthritis couldn't try it, and there are adaptations within that.
yes, you know, would wearing splints, perhaps wrist splints, be helpful? I don't know. I'm not a golfer, you can tell.
Compression gloves might be quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's well worth talking to your physio or your occupational therapist about perhaps things that would be adaptable to make you make it possible for you to do what it is that you'd like to do. I mean, it's I know some time ago we got a query about somebody who had would love to walk their dog, but the dog did tend to pull on the lead, which was hurting their wrists. So we recommended that you can get leads that a lot of runners use, where you have it's around your waist. So and so the lead is attached to your waist rather than you holding it on your wrist. So there are often lots of workarounds to get back to doing the thing that you enjoy doing. I'm conscious of the time, and I'm so grateful for you all for giving up your evening to talk about it. And thank you all for all the lovely comments that you've put into the chat, and you're supporting and sharing your experiences with each other. As I said, we are working on, well, Ailsa predominantly is working on the next module in our exercise, in our SMILE, which is our self-management individualized learning environment. We currently have quite a lot of modules all on there. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. Where have you been? You're missing out. It's really wonderful. You can dip in and dip out. You could start a module. If somebody comes to the door and you have to pop the kettle on, that's fine. You can stop it and come back to where you left off. They're all about 20 minutes, 30 minutes long, with wonderful experts, and you will see all our lovely experts that you can see on screen this evening on our next module, which we hope will be available later in the year. And just, I'd like to hand it back over to Ailsa just to talk a little bit about what people can expect from that next module on exercise.
Sure. I'm really excited about this module because it's going to be, I hope, something a bit different and something that caters for everybody, because just like RA is very different for everybody, exercise and what you can do, what you like doing is very different for everybody. We will have, in addition to Will as our clinical expert, we'll also have the wonderful Professor George Metzios, who is a world expert in exercise physiology, and he'll be telling us some of the science behind why it's good to exercise. Will be taking on the sort of practical clinical side of things in terms of the rheumatology multidisciplinary team. But we'll also have 15-minute taster sessions with people like Ayesha and Jess, doing specific things that if you're not able to go out and dance or play golf or something, but you want to do something to start increasing your activity, you'll be able to do some of these great things that we've been talking about tonight: resistance training, chair yoga. We'll have tripudium movement, which I had to look up, I have to say. I didn't know what that was initially. As you said, dance movement, and also Tai Chi. So we'll have these little taster modules that people will be able to watch and just get themselves started in something that they might not have done before. So hopefully we will be able to launch this around the middle of the year. I think it's going to make a valuable addition to the modules that we've already got in Smile. So if you haven't been on Smile registered, please go. The link is on screen. Go and sign up. It's free, and knowledge is power, is all I can say. The more you can know about your disease and how to manage it yourself, especially in a changing NHS landscape, the better.
That's great. And again, sorry we didn't manage to get to all your questions in the chat. I hope that has encouraged many of you to seek out what will work for you, be it Pilates or yoga or Tai Chi or resistance training or hydrotherapy. There will be something that will work for you. And don't feel that you're competing against somebody else who's doing something that you think, oh, I should be able to do that. Find out what works for you. Do try the exercise videos that we have on our website. Just doing a little bit at home. As I said, when you're watching TV or waiting for the kettle to boil, etc. Again, once more, thank you so much for all of you joining us. Keep an eye out for the next Smile module. We have these live broadcasts usually on the last Wednesday of every month. You will find out what the next topic is in our events section on the website, so you can find that out. We will, of course, be publicising it like we did this one. Thank you so much for everybody who joined in and asked questions in the chat and has supported each other. And I think that's it for this evening. I must admit, I'm going to now do a little bit of surfing on my sofa and put my feet up rather than exercise. So I'm not going to practice what I preach, which is very naughty. But I will say I was dancing last night and started to learn the tango, and I loved it. So there you go. So there's something for everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Will, Ayesha, Katy, Jess and Ailsa. And we'll see you in a month's time, live on a screen near you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.